There's something oddly comforting in the belief that the ground beneath us is steady, unshakable, and even. But comfort and reality don't always align, especially not in energy. If you've spent time in this industry, you know better. You know the ground shifts. You know the headlines and hype tend to skew the narrative. And you know the assumptions we build on are shaped by systems and big egos behind them. I'm Mark Roach, founder of FutureWise Energy. I built this platform to clear away the fluff, try to cut through the noise, and offer a grounded perspective on where we stand in energy today and maybe where we need to go. My years have taken me from the oil fields to boardrooms, from billion-dollar negotiations to sitting across tables where power plays intersect with political games. But this message today is not about those rooms. It's about shedding light for anyone curious or invested in understanding the bigger picture. The truth is, this industry doesn't operate like a bank account or a gold bar collection. When people talk about oil as an asset, they often think it's something stackable or measurable with ease. But oil doesn't sit in a vault. It's hidden. It's layered deep beneath the surface, requiring an immense amount of effort and intelligence and coordination to quantify and recover. Data interpretations, geologic complexity, political pressures, and market dynamics create a game where knowing isn't as simple as it seems. Even some of the smartest people in power struggle to fully grasp this ambiguity. Yesterday, for example, President Trump claimed the U.S. holds twice the oil reserves of the rest of the world. It's this kind of statement that sounds decisive and reassuring when placed in a soundbite, but it glosses over how resource valuation really works. Those who've worked decades evaluating basins know it's anything but certain. I had a mentor once in this oil and gas business decades back who faced these pressures firsthand in the Middle East. He held a high-profile role over there, a region at the heart of an international energy narrative, especially back at that time in the 70s. And when he wouldn't overstate reserve numbers to satisfy political motives, he was ostracized. These are the types of dynamics at play when energy resources are tied to power structures. Valuations don't just reflect geology, they reflect geopolitics, ambition, and quite often storytelling. That's why this work requires more than technical expertise. It demands honesty and distance, some perspective, the ability to call something an estimate without flinching, to buck the system that where numbers are manipulated for headlines. Well, that takes some courage, that takes some guts, and it's actually quite rare. Those headlines, by the way, can often steer narratives that decisions that can ripple across the world. But this isn't just about decision makers or companies at the top. This is really what I'm talking about today is about the collective, about you, the broader body of people whose understandings of energy, geopolitics, and daily exposure that shapes and impacts your view, and where you react to sensationalized headlines and short-term debates. And here's a tough pill to swallow. Much of what we all believe about power structures, markets, and even our own roles within them is manipulated to fit a narrative of convenience. It's not entirely your fault. The system often lies to you, stoking fear, inflating egos, and delivering sound bites over substance. The walls of that system are tall and ingrained. But here's the hopeful part. We can dismantle them brick by brick. The collective can wake up, and I've changed my stance over time myself. Years ago, I wrote a piece titled "The Collective Has No Soul," But today I believe otherwise. Yes, waking up takes time. Systems evolve slowly, but we've seen it happen. Take a broader view of history for a moment. Women in the US were granted rights over a century ago, but it's only been the last generation or maybe two that have been able to step into the fullness of those freedoms. Change arrives not in tidal waves, but in slow, steady currents. The same is true in our energy systems. If we think that we will force clean energy solutions onto every community by 2030, we may need a big reality check. Not because it isn't needed, but because adaptation happens unevenly, and it's not always uniform, harmonious, or comfortable. What works in one part of the world or in your community may not fit another. If 2050 feels like a more feasible marker, it's because systems take time to unravel and rebuild responsibly. Energy remains central to our lives, a force that fuels almost every move that we make. Its power, literally and metaphorically, our economies are built around us moving around and buying and consuming in different parts of our community across town. If we sit alone in our home, well, we know where that goes. But energy drives us to jobs, to visit the people we love, to live more freely. And yet it's also shaped by constraints. For the average person, the infrastructure around you dictates your choices. And as long as the collective remains reactive to fast headlines and emotional triggers, those constraints will hold. The US narrative is a bubble in many respects. We're a nation of 4% of the world's population, but the systems that we've built often ignore the realities of the remaining 96% of the world. That dichotomy demands balance, a reckoning between our desires and those global needs. The good news? The tools for securing resiliency and safety exist today, technologically speaking, but the tools don't implement themselves. Visionary change happens when people move beyond ego and beyond the allure of drama that distorts clear thinking. It happens when we recognize that our collective awakening isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. What lies beneath the surface in energy and in human potential can shift our course, but only if we're willing to understand it, to see through the noise and meet the truths head on, no matter how uncomfortable or how inconvenient. That's what makes this work worth doing. That's why I created FutureWise Energy, because what matters most isn't how much oil we think we have or how fast we can transition from it. It's whether we approach the future with clarity and adaptability for individuals, for industries, for the world. Thanks for taking the time to think about something deeper than a headline today with me. Thanks for seeing the bigger picture. I'm Mark Roach, and this is FutureWise Energy. Let's keep waking up together.